Wow, wow, wow. Last week, we were talking about defining toxic relationships. And this week, we go on and start looking at how do you identify or know that your relationship is toxic. Now, with me today is our usual panelist. We have Rose Mbaye, who is a psychologist and a counselor, and will be helping us throughout this topic today. Welcome to the show, Rose.
Thank you.
The other person that we've got here is Jackie Wegoki, who is an educator and a trainer. Welcome to the show, Jackie.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we have Sanju, who has graced our show since the inception. Welcome to the show, Sanju.
Hi, glad to be here.
Now, today we will be looking at how do you identify that your relationship is toxic. Now, there are so many ways that you can identify that and you can know that you are living with someone who is toxic. And to give us an overview of this, we're going to give the floor to Rose Mbaye. Rose, please take us through this.
Okay, great to hear from you again. We're talking about toxic relationships. And I want to mention a few things. How can you identify you're in one? As we said last time, when you realize that you are giving more than taking, you feel like you're draining. Always, you never receive anything, but you find yourself giving. And when you give, you don't feel appreciated. You don't feel like you're doing justice to the person you're giving. For example, if it's an act of service, you expect when you do an act of service, at least an appreciation of thank you. But the more you give, the more you get a lot of criticism. So that is one of the things that can make you know that you're in a toxic relationship. Remember we said someone who brings you down more than up. So that is one of the things that can make you know that you are in a toxic relationship. Another thing is when you realize that you're kind of lost. Someone is detaching you from all your network. Someone doesn't want you to connect to your friends, your relatives, your families, and make sure, if possible, you're not in communication at all, including watching over your phone. Through like someone getting your phone and wanting to know who you talk to the whole day and why and what you said. That is a red flag. You have a freedom to live in this world. You need to know that you have a freedom of your relationships. As long as you do it responsibly, nobody should dictate to you who to relate with, especially the people that you know, they are the people that really helps you, including fellowship. There's someone who tell you after church, I don't want to see you in those groups of women that you meet. So that's a red flag. You need to take care. Get to know that is a red flag. That's a toxic relationship. Thank you
so much, Rose. And Sanju, I can see you are burning to jump in there. Sanju, please take it away.
Yeah, that's right. Rose has talked about something very significant about trust, where you find that if one person doesn't trust the other person, that's really an indication that's not a healthy relationship. So, but also want to add the fact that if you find yourself that you are not happy in that kind of a relationship, you find yourself all the time, you are crying and all that, it makes you think that, did I, like, for example, did I relate to this person? Is this person a human being, or is she an onion? Because, I'm crying all the time. So if you find yourself, you're crying and you're not happy in that relationship, that is an indication that that relationship is draining you emotionally and physically. And my also second point, I would like to say that if you find yourself thinking about ways to get out of this relationship, then that's an indication that you're not happy, that is a toxic relationship, and maybe you need someone to spell it to you. So maybe that's why we are here, to spell it to people that if you have been thinking, and finding ways to try to get out of that relationship, then that could be a toxic relationship that you should, get out of it.
Wow, thank you so much, Sanju. Now, Jackie, how do we identify this kind of relationships? And, if you're living with someone who is toxic, you may recognize some of these signs in yourself as well, your partner or the relationship itself. Are there some instances where both of you are toxic, Jackie?
Yes, I think both of you can become toxic, especially when you find that one party is so toxic that they start affecting another. And possibly a good example would be because, for example, for couples, you have lived together. And so you find the way you handle issues, maybe there's a lot of blame, a lot of criticism. If you do an evaluation, there are times you find that actually that is the pattern we have created, like in resolving issues, where we blame one another, we criticize each other, and put each other down. Because another characteristic of toxic relationship is belittling. Even in situations where you should be celebrating each other. For example, let's say somebody has done so well. It could even be they have achieved an award. You find that the other party, like when you bring those news and talk about it, instead they are looking at the negative bit of it, or they even ignore it totally. They don't want to celebrate you. And so it keeps making the victim feel, I am not enough, and you remain in a victimhood. So that could also be the other thing, that you can also see this where we both, either one of us or both of us are operating, where we are always in a victim state, instead of seeing how we can actually come out of it. And the other thing you'll find is that in a toxic relationship, people will dwell a lot on your weaknesses because they always want to have you feeling that you're down there, instead of thinking about what are her strengths or his strengths, so that I can try to bring up their esteem. When you find yourself in such situations, either one of you or two of you, that you're always looking at the weaknesses more than the strengths, then that could also be a manifestation of a toxic relationship.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Well, we can categorize this type of toxic relationships in terms of signs. And I would like us to go through maybe some of these signs, like you may find people who are jealous, people who have controlling behaviors. We went through this last week. You may find people with resentment. You may find people with dishonesty, with patterns of disrespect, negative financial behaviors. There are so many things that we can talk about. There are people with constant stress. They never leave you alone. There are people who ignore your needs. There are people as well who are in lost relationships. That is people who have stopped spending time with you or with your family or their friends. They avoid, either is to avoid some conflict with you or to get around having to explain what's happening with your relationship. We have people who have lack of self-care. Now, we are people who are hoping for a change, and there are some we call the walking on eggshells. These are people who worry that by bringing up problems, you provoke extreme tension. So you become conflict avoidant and keep an issue to yourself. Now, I want you to go through what we have discussed there, Rose, and as a psychologist, I want you to just dissect those issues. How can we, if we identify we are living in a toxic relationship, how should we proceed with this relationship?
I like that. I like that bit because one thing that we should know is we are not responsible over what people think about us. That is very key. You cannot dictate what someone else thinks about you or sees you as, but you are responsible of your own feeling and knowing who you are. What does that mean? When you're relating with a toxic person, it's very important for you to know one thing. It is not about you, it's about them. That what gives you a sign of relief, knowing it's about them, it's not about you. But now, remember, the bad thing with the toxicity is they keep on feeding you this information of feeling like that makes you feel that you're not worth it, you're not an achiever, you're not beautiful. And with the time, we say that words have an irreversible impact on the person, on the receiver. So if you're not careful and you keep on digesting and hearing and listening and giving a lot of interest on whatever this narcissist says, you may find yourself ending up becoming that person. So the most important thing is knowing it is about them, and knowing that you need to have a very high self-esteem. Get to know, who am I? And what is it life about? It's about narcissism. It's about the people who think that I'm not an achiever, like what Jackie said. Instead of someone celebrating you, someone thinks, you just gotten a degree. People are now doctors. What is this undergraduate? You're coming to just let them know, by the way, me as a person, I have never achieved this. So to me, it's a whole world. I'm proud it's my own hard work. So be assertive enough to know who you are, and make sure that someone's thought and idea about you will never affect you. You need to raise a very, very high self-esteem and self-awareness for you to be able to live with them. However, you need to evaluate and say, is it worth using all this energy for me to put up with you? Is it worth it? You need to evaluate. If you think you'll use more energy by the time you're half of your lifespan, you're done. You need to know, what do I want? Is this what I want in life? And ask your question, and then you need to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose. Most of us have experienced some sort of toxicity in our relationships. And many people assume that toxic relationships are doomed. Now, I want Sanju, you bring this into focus. Is this always the case? And we have been talking about the negative sides. We've been talking about the toxicity. But is there any positives that can be gained from a toxic relationship? Are there, can things be worked out? Sanju, can you tell us, are we able to work things out?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I believe, we can work out all things, because as you know, not everything in this life is perfect. And no relationship is perfect. So even when one party in a relationship becomes toxic to the other, or the other way around, then of course we can have remedy. As I was saying, all these things about toxicity in a relationships, all these things, they stem from that human nature, which as you know, from the Garden of Eden after the fall. All these bad things that happen in our lives, all this sin, all this anger, because as you know, toxicity is not a safe place. It's a place where people have this anger and selfishness and unforgiveness and unkindness and things like those. And of course, from coming from a biblical perspective, we can actually bring a solution to that. As you can recall from 1 Corinthians chapter 13 onwards, it talks about love. And it says that love is patient, love is kind, love does not keep a record of wrong. So if these two people in this relationship, they come together and they understand that maybe one party has that kind of a toxicity towards the other, then they can work out, maybe go out, have a counseling session with a person like Rose, and they can work out on these things, on how this person can come out of that place of anger, how they can, slow down their anger and get rid of it, or, unkindness, help them get rid of these kind of things, unkindness, narcissism, grandiosity, selfishness, stuff like that. So, with the time and with the right kind of, counseling and prayer, if they are believers, then these things can be worked out and these people can have a solution. Not all toxic relationship can end up in things like divorce or separation or stuff like that. So there's always a solution towards this thing.
Thank you so much, Sanju. Now, as what Sanju has talked about, he's brought the word of God into focus here. You've really said that we can really work it out through the word of God. So meaning if the two of you have invested your lives into Christ, there's a possibility you could be able to work things out. Now, Jackie, I would like you also to talk about some issues or some ways that people in toxic relationship can invest in, ways that they can invest in, that willingness to invest and make sure that the relationship works out.
I will start by saying that for a toxic relationship, especially for people who are really toxic, to work out, there has to be a lot of intentionality. And like Rose mentioned, she brought in the aspect of evaluation. There are many times that we don't realize how toxic I am or we are in a relationship or in a friendship until you sit back actually and take stock. You know, where you need to ask yourself, how do I feel? How do I react as a person when so-and-so addresses me or talks to me? And what feelings am I causing another person? So to evaluate to what extent is the other person toxic, or to what extent am I the one actually toxic? So unless first it starts with really that intentionality to understand self and try to understand the other person so that you can be able to evaluate the impact of the toxicity. And I will say that you had talked about the issues of the positiveness of a toxic relationship. That brings in the positiveness that if I evaluate, I am able to discover to what extent I'm toxic, and I can purpose and say intentionally, I have to work on this. So that's one positive thing, that I can realize my weakness. I can realize that I'm actually a toxic person, and I can endeavor to work on it. So some of the things that I would say that you must accept, you must be that space, you have acceptance, and you say intentionally, I need to become better. So you continue on continuous learning and relearning to be able to get to that space. That means that get information, seek help, even a counselor like Rose when you need to, discuss it with your spouse in cases where you need to discuss these issues with your spouse, and also learn to express yourself, to have time with yourself. Personally, I really like the issue of journaling, where you actually sit down and talk through whatever happens in your life and try to see, like, what are the things that I do well and what are the things that I need to work on. So even that would also be something that can be adopted, that you keep journaling your journey through becoming a better person if you have been toxic. And if it's the other person, like in case of spouses, it's a platform that you can also discuss it together.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jackie. And I like the point you talked about, that openness to outside help. Now, Rose, being a psychologist, in relationships, we have different personalities. And I think it's important people, when they start dating, these are some of the things that they watch out for. What would you advise? Because this comes into play when it comes to openness to outside help. Because if you both of you are of the same personality, you might get stuck into that. Because I remember when we were doing counseling for our wedding, and one thing that you are told is you try to work things out between yourselves and you seek outside help as a last resort. But what I found out is many people are shy off from outside help. What would you advise people who are actually getting into marriage? What are some of these pointers, some things, personalities that do they avoid marrying certain people?
A good question. I think if you say about these personalities, some people like the ones I see can be shocked and afraid to marry some certain personalities. Well, I want to add from what Jackie said. If you're dating and you know very well that you have seen all these pointers, I don't really agree on a certain personality, because fine, it is just like some personalities and melancholies are very nice, make good. They can perfect on toxicity if they are one. But I've met so many melancholists who are not toxic. Meaning, it's not necessary. I've seen some who are toxic.
Now, you better tell people.
What does it mean? Okay.
When you start mentioning melancholy and stuff like that, I think you better explain first what melancholy is. Maybe John, we could make this the next topic about personalities, because it's a very, very wide. But what am I saying? It doesn't mean that it's a certain class of people who are toxic. It comes in, there are many factors that contribute. Remember what we said, at times it's family of origin. If all what you saw was fighting and jealous and all this, you become a toxic person. If you came up or you are brought up in a family where love exists, there's a lot of understanding, the way you resolve issues, or rather the way your parents used to resolve issues, then you have a better way. Basically, it's a behavior, like Jackie said, it's a behavior that you learn along the way. You learn it, and then you can unlearn it at some point and learn some new behaviors. However, I want to put this very well.
There are some personalities that we'll be explaining later about each personality and the strength and weaknesses that they group very well. It's like they water that toxicity in someone. But when you, like what you're saying, when you're dating, most of the people who are in love, they don't want to see this. Actually, like someone mentioned, someone will slap you and say, by the way, he just made a mistake. He was supposed by the way to beat a fly that was passing around.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this, it can't. But remember, it has just happened. Someone will come and lie to you, black and white, kabisa. But you're in denial. Why? Because you have been covered by love. So those of you who are dating, if you realize there's some weird characteristic on people, you need to be more careful and know they can only become worse. Actually, what I say is, when you're dating, that is the best person you can see ever. The best person. So some people can only change from there to the worst.
Wait, Rose. I don't think that is correct, because some people mask it. They mask it, and after marriage, then they come out. Their real self comes out.
That's what I'm saying. That's the best person. Can you imagine all those masks, but still you can see some red flags through the masks?
Yeah.
What does that mean? When you get married, the mask is fall off and the worst will happen. What am I saying? Young people, you need not to mask yourself. Be yourself. And in case you see this because by the end of the day, if you get some people in a relationship or in marriage and ask them, tell me, when you are dating, what is this thing that you saw but you assumed? They will tell you. They will tell you when the day they got, their partner told them, I cannot stay with a woman that is more learned than me. And imagine this person is telling you this, you're doing your master's and he's doing his BA, undergraduate. And you still go ahead and say, I do to this person. What exactly are you saying? Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Thank you.
These things are red flags. Yes.
Yeah, actually, it's very important that during dating, that's when you identify these red flags. And like you rightly said there, if you find that this person is toxic right from the word go, there's no point going ahead. And I think most of us who ended up getting married and retained your marriage and maintained it, you had others that you left behind. And it's important to say that we have pretenders, even in the house of God, in the house of faith. So do not bank on that you are in church and you are getting someone who is born again. I don't think that's a good analogy or a good evaluation of someone to marry, because we know there are these people who just come to church to get married or to marry. And Sanju, you are dating at the moment. You could be the best person to tell us, well, how would you identify when you're dating the person is toxic, or at what point should you run away if you can?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think we should start with the fact that anyone should start thinking about dating if they are ready to get married. So if they are not ready to get married, then they should stop that process. But it's
you mean no boyfriend, no girlfriend? You just head into fiancé?
I meant that you should not just be this kind of a guy who is not defining the relationships that you have with this person. You're just there in the, friend zone thing. So it's like you're not going anywhere. You're just playing with the person. I think that's wrong. A person should start thinking about it or start doing the dating if they are ready to go to the next step, which is now courting and all that and going to marriage.
I can see Rose is burning with desire to just jump in there. Rose, there's something you want to jump in there and say.
I'm concerned. What is this that they are calling dating? What is dating, Sajul? Because I think what happens is whatever they call dating is all about taking coffee and like, I love you. 20 times they go home. This is the right time for you people to get to know the family of origin. How is your family like? How does your dad relate with your mom? So that, let me tell you, you'll not be very far from how your father treated you like it or not. You're not to be very far. If there are some things you picked growing up that you wouldn't want to do, it's rather that time you take advantage and get a premarital counselor so that you get to know, how do I overcome this? because some things are forces and they are very strong forces that it is not easy for you just to overcome. So when you're dating, get to know someone better. It's not about your beauty. Today you're beautiful. I like your hairstyle. I like your outfit. Nothing like that. These things will just outgrow with the time. I know that you're really burning, but take advantage. Get the right counsel so that you can you can have someone can shed more light of whatever you need to focus when you're dating. Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
What you're saying is exactly what I was saying. That this dating period is where you get to know this other person well. So you get to know about their temperaments, their past, their future, their passions, you connect even on the intellectual and spiritual level. So this is the time where you get to know who is this person that I want to get into a relationship with. The problem happens when some boys and girls, they just are in friendship with each other. They tell each other they love each other, and they are going nowhere. That's the kind of dating. I don't think that's even dating, because they have no definition of what they are doing. But when these two individuals have a definition of where they are going, they are planning to get married, then when they come together and try to know each other, then that's dating. And if it goes well, then they can go to the next step, where they get into courtship, they get into marriage, and God bless their union. But I wanted to...
Oh, yeah, go on.
So I wanted to say that in that period, that's why you get to know a person well. You get to know about their fears, about their dreams, about their personalities. And it's this point where you can maybe help each other. As the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. You can help each other, to become better than, the way they could have been if they were alone. So I think, it's in this period, people should not rush into it, like take 2 years or take 2 months or 3 months. They should take, some time, maybe a year or two, to be able to know if this is the right person for them, or if it's not the right person for them. But other than personality, I wanted to say about something else we call love languages. That's something that many people maybe don't put into consideration. Love languages, there's a person who has described them to be 5. It talks about, the way people understand that you love them, the way people understand that you appreciate them is by, talking their language. And these languages are things like, gifts, things like words of affirmation, things like quality time, things like physical touch. So when you do these things to people, then they understand that, hey, you love me. You might be bringing gifts to them. You bring this flower or chocolate to a girl, but maybe she does not like that. She wants quality time. She wants you to be there when she's talking her emotional, problems and all that. She wants your quality time. So I think it's even in this dating period, and even for those people who are in marriage and other relationships, that they should know what is the gift, what is the love language of this other person that I can speak, so that they can know that I love them and I appreciate them.
Wow. Thank you, Sanju. The love language, Jackie, I think you've been around for some time. You've gone to school. You've seen so many people. What say you?
So maybe picking it from the issue of toxicity. One of the things I would like to add is that there are many times that we ignore, and now this one also connecting it to the issue of dating. And Rose had mentioned the red flag. Sometimes it's very difficult when you're in love to actually accept the fact that you're in a toxic relationship. And I think we have had a discussion with Rose where we realized that many times people will come and say, I saw it. I saw all the red flags, but I never acted on it. Somehow you become blinded and you keep moving on. And a few people will also say that, I wish I moved on at that time, or I wish I did not accept to keep moving on with this relationship, having realized that indeed, even at the very beginning, it was already toxic. The other thing is
so if I can stop you there for a minute, like you say, they should leave. I also talking about people who are in married relationship. Are we supporting like people should divorce?
Actually, that's what I was coming to. So I wanted to say again now, in case of the married people, the married couples, like we said, you can work through it, that whether there's intentionality and willingness and the commitment to work on it. But there are times when you see this is totally not working, and it is unfortunate. I think our psychologists can tell us that there's a lot of mental illness and depression that is resulting from toxic relationships. People have shortened their life because of toxic relationships, where for sure you are so belittled. It causes so much stress until you get to depression. I think in such cases, yes, it's good to weigh the options. That would I rather shorten my life because I have to pursue this relationship, or would I be in a better position if actually I stepped out and actually took some time off out of that relationship? So I want to say, and this is my thought, that there are times that come and you have to call it, yes, it is goodbye. I may have to restart my life again. Yes, good night, as you have said it. Yes.
Well, in Kenya, we know there are some parts of Kenya where, the women call themselves we the men, women. And we know people have ended up losing their parts of their body. People have ended up being burnt with hot water. And I think there's a time, like you have said there's a time when it comes and you say enough is enough. And Rose, as a psychologist, when is this time when you say enough is enough?
I like that bit. We are laughing, but I know this is a serious thing in this world. It's really causing serious troubles. Yeah. And I want to say something like what happens in the toxic relationships. There's some disorder, we call them narcissistic disorder. It is a disorder that is a sister to, actually it manifests itself in a toxic relationship. So what happens is they have something we call an abuse cycle. And this is a cycle most of the people are still going around. How does it go? There is an abuse that happens. Remember, abuse can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be any type of abuse, even verbal. It's abuse. Abuse is an abuse. And so what happens? They run into something we call honeymoon. Honeymoon is the time you're called all the names. Sweetie, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I didn't want to hit you. I didn't want to tell you that. It's a slip of tongue and I was under influence. They tell you everything. And by then you'll be so convinced very fast. Remember, each time there's an abuse, there is an abuser and the victim. So a victim takes it very fast and forgives and moves on with life. In honeymoon, you think now you're just a new bride. And you feel very nice. Then what happens? They're like, it's like a wheel. Then they turn into a normal life. They say now in this normal, there is no tension and there is no honeymoon. So life too, it's just there. You can tell it's plain, but anyway, there's no tension. So you're happily married. Then with the time, they get into tension. Tension is the time someone will come in and ask a question and you're raising voice and you don't know what is happening. So the victim shrinks back. Why? There is tension and they don't know what will happen next. And all that they are doing because they have their own agendas. They want to fulfill another abuse. So they are finding a way to another abuse. So by that time, the tension will be so high. And then all of a sudden there will be a trigger in that maybe someone comes and says, I don't want to see this remote here. I don't want to see children playing around here. And that day a child will just come with his naughtiness and do a mess. And that's the time now, this person now will have this a trigger. That's the time they go back to abuse. After abuse, immediately, sorry, dear, and someone will come with their chocolates, and then you forget. It is called an abuse cycle. And that is what narcissists use. And remember, that is toxicity. Why should someone deliberately decide, now it's tension. No one will laugh in this house. And now it's abuse time. That is what you call toxicity. I like the question you asked. When do you decide it's over? You decide it's over if you weigh options and realize, is this what I want in life? I know those of us who come from a church, we are believers, we are told by the Bible, till death do you part. But then remember what
and also God hates divorce.
God hates divorce. So you feel like a sinner. So remember, by the time you die, by the way will come and bury you. You will not live again. So, and remember, it is the perfect will. When the Bible says that for the plans that God has for us are plans for good, not for evil. So is this a plan for good for you to be in a toxic, in a tension zone life? No, it is not God's plan. So what do we say? Just weigh option. What God intended you versus what you are going through. Is that the plan of God? Yes, I'm a believer. Yes, I believe in the Bible. But remember, you have an option. This is your life. You need to know that you need to live your life. Someone needs to respect you. The Lord is God of relationships and should respect that.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Rose. You've really taken it very, very well. Now, as we wrap up, Sanju, I can see Jackie, you burning with saying something. Now, briefly, because of time, Jackie, I'll let you go first.
I wish to say that sometimes I think that culture and religion have also in some way contributed to toxicity. And speaking it from Ruth, she talked about, you've said it, John, God hates divorce. But remember, even the same Bible talks about situations where divorce may happen. But you'll find our culture connecting it to the religion, they'll overemphasize sometimes where he hates and not realize for sure there are situations that we call for divorce. And when it comes to culture, it's where you start realizing the labeling now for those that have undergone, those kind of like divorce separation, without us taking the time to understand what were the circumstances that led to this. Because in some cases, you listen to the story, it's only that after somebody maybe is gone, when you come and say, I wish we listened to them. And if we can avoid that, if only we stop the labeling and we start looking at our minds and see, are there value? Is there a culture that no longer serves us, and can we do better now when it comes to addressing such issues?
Well, thank you so much, Rose and Jackie, for your input in that segment. Now, Sanju, just to wrap it up, I'll give you that opportunity to give your closing sentiments.
All right, Jackie and Rose have said very important things. And I also want to add the fact that since we're talking about toxicity, we're not just limiting to a relationship of a husband and wife or boy and girl. We're also talking about relationship in a workplace. Maybe it's your neighbor, maybe it's a brother, a sister, a mother, a father. So I think when it comes to things that like marriage, that's why it's really hard for things like divorce to come into play. But when it comes to your neighbor or to your brother or sister, I think it's really, it's not that hard. When you find that there's toxicity, you can call it quits, and it's not as hard as this one in a relationship. So I think, as I say, there are people who know that they are in those relationships, and if they have been planning, they've been thinking about it, then it's high time that if they realize that, then they can call it quits in such other places which are not just in the marriage, but maybe it's a neighbor or a coworker or a sibling.
Well, thank you so much, Sanju. Indeed, the Bible says, how can two walk together unless they agree? That is in Amos 3:3. And then in 2 Corinthians 6, verse 14, it says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Although it talks about unbelievers, it goes on to say, what relationship has righteousness to do with darkness, or to do with unbelievers? And what relationship is there between light and darkness? I will leave that question for you to ponder, because next week we will continue with this segment. The conversation continues on Diaspora TV, and our guests will be more than happy to come and continue with this topic. And we will look at different personalities. Rose had started it. We have melancholy, sanguines, and others that she will tell us about. And keep it locked. Make sure you subscribe, you like, comment, share, and follow Diaspora TV, both on YouTube and on Facebook. And now we are in Instagram. These things are too much to ponder. So many networks. I think we are heading over to TikTok. We are heading over to Twitter. So make sure you follow us wherever we go, and then we go to Snapchat. But we'll need content for that. Now head over to Diaspora TV, Australia, YouTube, and subscribe, and tell others to tell others. Until then, bye-bye.